7:05 I've got on my computer here. We don't have a quorum, so we cannot call for minutes, and don't see anybody in the public there to comment, so I guess we'll forego the public comment and jump right into staff reports with Betsy.
Okay. So I don't have a whole lot to report on. I haven't been able to make several business visits since I last reported to you all. I think I've done 2 since we last met in April. March. But I have met with some new businesses. So thanks to Jeremy, I met with Harris Web Works, and that was really great. It's a B2B web company that's in 245 now. They came from New Haven. I met with a new food truck and put their story on the town website. I'm about to put the Harris Web Works one on the website probably this coming week. And as you all probably know, Paolo Restaurant opened yesterday. And so visited with them and got their photo on the town's Facebook page and on the website the day before they opened. So we have some businesses coming into town. So good news there. Just earlier this week, I visited with the Valley Chamber of Commerce. Bill Purcell, the director there, lives here in town. So we're just kind of talking about how the chamber could support Woodbridge and what sort of ways we could partner together. And I had mentioned to them the EDC's idea to have an economic development forum. And he said that he's working with Ansonia and Derby. They're going to be hosting some soon. So I'm hoping to attend one of those to kind of get some ideas for what we might do, what the format could look like. And I've got 2 conflicting workshops coming up at the end of this month, both economic development related. I emailed both of you in case either one of you were interested in one of them, which sounds sort of real estate related. One is about green energy for businesses. It's run by the state's Green Bank, and it's the morning of May 22nd, and the other one is about bioscience for economic developers. And I think they're going to be talking about the need for lab space and how to help these folks find the space that they need. And unfortunately, they're on the same day at the same time. So if either of you are, I thought maybe you guys might be interested in the lab space one, but
yeah, it sounds interesting.
But we could talk about that offline later.
Is there a fee to register?
That one is $20,
Okay.
but we could talk about that later. So there's all sorts of great events going on. I'm sure Jamie's cued into a lot of them. So as they come up, if I think any of them are relevant to EDC members, I'll definitely be sharing that information with you guys. So and that's it.
And we have to celebrate because it's economic development week.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's very fitting.
Yeah, yes.
Oh, I knew it
What do we got?
We got
We got a
water.
restaurant opening.
Yes.
That's what we got.
Well, and there was
Cheers to
there
the
was
restaurant and a food truck.
Dinner
the
and photos.
webinar today that you said you attended. That you had some ideas.
Yeah, so what was interesting was that it was mainly local areas. So they talked a little bit about Danbury and some stuff up in Ridgefield, and it was, the notes that I took about it were a couple of things that were interesting given the demographics in Woodbridge was that they talked a little bit about doing youth programs as a way to get young entrepreneurs involved, and also that would raise awareness of parents who tend to be very focused on their kids. So they were talking about DECA and Young Entrepreneurs Association as an area of interest, and I know that there's been some stuff that's gone at Amity High School, but I think that that's definitely one of the things we may want to throw on our post-SWOT list of ideas, because there are apparently some national and regional programs and grants for promoting entrepreneurship for youth in all forms. And kind of the union of that plus some of the space, what's going on with, at Beecher they've got after-school activities that are STEM, and the makerspace at the schools, and the makerspace at the high school, and now the makerspace at the JCC.
Yeah.
There's a good bit of traction I think possible on
There's
those.
an active STEAM committee over at Amity High that I've been working with that also works with both of the middle schools. There's also the entrepreneurship program, the CTE, under the Career Tech Ed over at Amity High, and I work with them. They actually have a business that they run out of the entrepreneurship program there. where they make the stuff in manufacturing and Woodbridge side, and then they sell it through the entrepreneurship side. And
Mhm.
then May 29th will be STEAM Day at Amity High, where they bring all the fifth graders from Beecher up there, but they have probably 50, 60 tables set up. So all the fifth graders from Beecher can come up and see all the STEAM-related activities. So
Mhm.
if you're free, you might want to go up
Yeah.
and see everything that's going
That's
on
the
there
29th?
to make this connection at Chicago. Yeah, it's May 29th.
Yeah.
I just got the invite earlier this week.
Yeah, it was just interesting because one of the case studies that they talked about was someone from DECA and one of their entrepreneurship groups that ended up going on to make custom lacrosse wear, and she got into Shark Tank as a 19-year-old.
That's cool.
So, it's one of those things that it's a good story, but I think given the number of students and, younger people in Woodbridge, it's kind of us hopefully playing to one of our strengths, if we can help organize it. So.
Yeah.
We brought them in, the Amity, did we do the CT? Anybody remember? We brought somebody in, oh no, that was the career counseling office that we brought in, the school counselors a couple years ago to talk about the internship opportunities for the seniors for the last couple weeks they go out and they work, or they intern throughout the area. So we had somebody come in and talk about that, but we haven't done anything here lately with them, so definitely opportunities.
Yeah, or at least make the connection and then share the information. I could share the information through the business e-newsletter so that people know how to.
Sure, yeah, because they're always looking for different things.
Yeah.
And I work with CT. I also am working to certify the school as a pre-apprenticeship through the manufacturing program with the state of Connecticut. And so I'm working with the superintendent on that, working with the principal. Hopefully that'll be done soon. Actually, I'm meeting with Regional Workforce Alliance tomorrow, Bill Villano, because they just got that $3.4 million for workforce development for the region. So there's various roles that I'm involved in with that. So there might be some things that we can bring back here to the commission as well. Because a lot of it has to do with not just Workforce Alliance, but networking with a lot of the schools, just as you're saying, the comprehensive high schools and stuff.
Right. So there's some neat ideas in there. I'll email around my notes from the meeting. They recorded the webinar, so you can actually watch it whenever you want. I mean, they made it sound like you needed to go attend while they were scheduled, but they've recorded, so you can watch it whenever you want now.
That's great.
And Jeremy, new businesses or stuff that you have? We don't have that on the agenda, but I didn't want to skip over that before we get started on the next step. New businesses or the real estate that's available, anything you want to cover?
No, I think there's just nothing that's really very new in the last month or so. I don't think in town that I'm aware of. Some stuff that happened down in Westville, but not directly in our town. There's retail space available at 1666 Litchfield. It's the former of the Acre Group, and it's our company has it for lease. And
It's commercial space.
what's that?
There's commercial space in the back.
There's commercial space in the back. There's not really a lot of new stuff. I mean, you saw that 4 Research Drive was getting auctioned. It's going on the market for auction. I'm not quite sure the reasoning or the story behind it, but apparently they can't find enough tenants to make it, for the operating costs of the building.
That's the building that was holding the JCC while they were renovating.
Yeah, exactly. There's still some tenants in there for sure, that have been there for quite a while, and then there's a couple packages of buildings for sale down on Research Drive as well. 11 researches on the market, 15 researches on the market. 7 research could be purchased in that package too. I mean, there's some opportunities for investors out there if someone wants to park some money and things like that. But there's not there's not a ton out there. We have there's really not much out there. That's new per se.
Last Thursday, I was telling Betsy, I ended up meeting Michael Harris from the Elm City Innovation. I don't know if anybody knows him. He was with the mayor's office for 5 or 6 years. He's been with Elm City Innovation for the last year or so. And so we were talking a lot about economic development in New Haven, but not just New Haven, but the region. And again, think about P2 Science and something that came out of Yale that came up here to Woodbridge and then grew and expanded up to Naugatuck and has 20,000 square foot manufacturing up in Naugatuck. How can we keep them here, and have a space for them, or be more incubator space for those great ideas that are coming out of New Haven? And the concern is, well, Woodbridge is too far, and how do we dispel that myth? Wallingford may be too far, but is Woodbridge really too far if a lot of the folks that are working there live here? And maybe it's not too far, and maybe it's a marketing thing, and just different things to brainstorm and think about, which brings us to our next step. And very excited about this process. So we're going to be doing a SWOT analysis, and I'll turn it over to our fellow commissioner, who will lead us in what I'm very excited about. Unfortunately, Jody can't be here, so she will hopefully be able to participate in the next session, but has provided some feedback to this process, so to make sure at least we capture some of her thoughts at the beginning of the process as well.
So Jody I've included some of Jody's comments already in the slides, and we'll talk through them. So I've only got a couple of things that I wanted to kind of talk about before we get into what is effectively a giant brainstorming session. So
Should I turn the lights off? Should I turn the lights off? Yeah. Is that better?
You guys see okay? So we had a conversation in the last meeting, and just kind of to rehash it, was that the idea of starting with the SWOT is to say, let's start by saying where we are, and then have a follow-on meeting to talk about ideas using the same assumptions, right? So one of the challenges that often happens in strategic planning, and I've been in management and strategic work in the software industry for 25 years at public and private companies running product management and business management. And really the idea with SWOT analysis is to make sure that everybody agrees on where you are before you start talking about what could you do, right? So the idea is, by having everybody on the same page about what we're good at, what we're not good at, and more importantly, what's going on in the market around us, which they tend to categorize as opportunities and threats. How do we prepare for those? And the idea is, if there are big waves coming and if you're a small fish, which in the kind of town and business world we are, our goal is to catch the waves, because we're not going to make one, right? New York City economic development, they can make a wave. Woodbridge is small enough that we need to see the waves and hop on them. Or if you want to think about threats, we need to understand what the threats are and get out of the way, because we can't just kind of stand there and take it, right? So the idea is that we categorize our things into strengths, weaknesses, and then opportunities and threats, which make up the SWOT. In addition, publishing that can help new commissioners. It can help us get volunteers. It can help people who we want to then bring into our processes say, hey, I want to help out with economic development in Woodbridge. Where are you guys? And we can say, well, listen, here's our SWOT analysis of the situation and where we think we are. Here's our idea of strategic efforts. Where do you think you can help out? So it's idea that we can give ourselves a little bit of a background for new people. So as I said, the part of this that I think is going to be interesting is SWOT is generally meant for businesses, where ironically, it's used for nonprofits, and I've used it for a couple of nonprofit businesses. But the interesting challenge here, when I think we talk about it for us, is we'll get to it in 1 second. But we talked about strengths and weaknesses and where they are. I think the catch is, what is our goal? And who do you compare yourself to? So let's start with the easiest one. We have strengths and weaknesses as a town, but compared to what? When you do SWOT analysis as a business, normally you compare it to a market. So you'll say, we're strong or we're weak compared to our peers, right? It doesn't help to say, have a technology company say that we're good at technology. Yes, everyone's good at technology. The question is, how good are you compared to other technology companies? So when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, one of our challenges is to say, strong compared to what? What is Woodbridge strong? What are our strengths compared to all cities? That's kind of rough. Do we want to compare ourselves to New Haven? That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So one of the things that we need to talk about real quick after I go through both parts of these is, how big do we want to compare? How big do we want to be visioning ourselves? So one thing is about, I believe we should be comparing ourselves to other towns our size, which is basically means, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses against the suburban towns in and around New Haven and our region. Comparing ourselves to Fairfield County, at some level, I don't think makes a lot of sense. And obviously comparing ourselves to every small town in America is unuseful. So what I'm proposing as we think about this is that we start by saying, what are things that we're strong at compared to the other kinds of towns around us? Because I think that'll help us sharpen what we're trying to do. More importantly, what are our strengths and weaknesses for attracting and growing businesses? Not what is our strength in general. And I think this was one of the comments that Jody had ended up sending in, was there's a challenge with economic development, I think, which is we can talk about what makes Woodbridge strong as a place to live, which has its purpose in the world. But honestly, that's something that is out of our scope, right? We're not the Board of Selectmen. Our job isn't to kind of make living in Woodbridge great, right? Our job is to improve economic development and business opportunities in town. So I think one of the things that we need to do is, when we think about all kinds of stuff, we need to focus on strengths and weaknesses for Woodbridge as a place to do business, or a place to grow business, or a place to be starting a business, right? And I think that, we talk about that, but what's interesting is in a lot of these cases when we've talked about what's strong about Woodbridge and what's weak about Woodbridge, a lot of people are talking about it as a place to live, not as a place to do business. So that was one part of it. Obviously, opportunities and threats, the kinds of things that we're going to want to talk about are things like economic trends, demographic trends, technology trends. So those are all out there. And as I said, why we're doing this is we want to leverage our strengths, mitigate our weaknesses, catch the waves of opportunities, and avoid threats. As we do these, we're going to try to prioritize them a little bit to put our biggest things at the top. And as I said, our real challenge here is, what are we trying to do? And what I'm proposing, again, is that we say, is this a good place to have a business? Is this a good place to run a business? I think the thing that I've seen the most in kind of my mental running through of this is, for businesses, I think what we may want to do is think about this in the three big parts. One is, what are our strengths and weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats for attracting businesses, retaining them, and then helping them grow? One of the things that was really interesting in the CERC presentation that I thought is an unsung hero is, our goal is the grand list, right? I mean, we have a very clear barometer and measurement for succeeding at economic development, and that's how big is the tax grand list for businesses as opposed to real estate. Well, how do we grow the grand list? Well, we either attract businesses, we retain them, or they become more profitable, right? I mean, people pay taxes because businesses make money. So one of the things that I think we need to remember about this is, if we can figure out, and we get into the idea portion of this, if there are things that make it easy or hard, or trends that are changing with profitability of companies, that's actually as big of an impact as us getting a new restaurant to open. Is if a restaurant doubled its size in Woodbridge, we would equally benefit the economic fortune of the town.
Because its assets increased.
Well, what
We don't get tax revenue from the business other than what its assets are, correct?
The real estate and the personal property.
the real estate and the personal property.
Right.
Right? So if the businesses grow, well, I mean, tangentially, if a business becomes more profitable like P2, they're going to get more space. They're going to have more employees. More people are going to be around the business in town. So the secondary parts of them running a business in town could be just growing the ones that are here, right? As opposed to just getting new businesses or retaining the ones that we've got. And one of the things that I thought that was interesting is that, you know, in subscription businesses and in other sorts of business models that are service-based, that tends to be how that companies organize their strategies. New customers, retaining customers, and increasing their wallet share of customers, right? So I think as a town, we need to think about economic development in all three of those aspects. And I think some of them will draw out different strengths and weaknesses that might not jump to mind immediately. Because I think it's easy to be like, well, how do we attract businesses? Get more people in, more businesses in. But as we know, we don't actually have a huge amount of places that businesses can go in town. So we might be equally effective at low-hanging fruit by focusing on how do we help the businesses that are already here. So, all right. So, I am cheating, and what I was going to do is edit this while it's up here. But I came up with some examples of stuff, and by no means is this the list. I wanted people to have an idea of some things to start with and to let you guys start arguing with me. But from now on, I am just a mediator, right? So one of the things that I thought was a valuable way to start looking at this is strengths, okay? And I did some talking about versus nearby towns and some why would you come to this region as a business, right? So if you're a business and you're looking at Woodbridge, what are our strengths? My gut is that what I hear from the most people about Woodbridge is, well, the schools are amazing.
But that's why it's attractive for a business? Isn't that why it's attractive to bring your family here to live? But it's not why it's attractive
You're right.
for your business.
Exactly, Jamie. And I started this and I started just coming up with ideas. So one of the things I wanted to do as an example is bring that up and then knock it down, right? So a lot of people, when they talk about Woodbridge and why it's great, talk about the schools. And I bring it up because I hear it the most, but from an economic development standpoint, I'm not sure that it matters.
Well, I would beg to
It
differ.
may matter
Okay.
for a type of business that wants to be in close proximity to lots of children that are in a affluent market. So for some kinds of businesses, it would be an attraction. But I would say a
But
general
is that,
attraction.
yeah, so then the question is that strength that we have a large number of children? Because that is true.
So what I've heard from
yeah.
some of the local businesses is they like the customer base in Woodbridge, and because our school system attracts a certain type of person who values education, they're usually more educated. And so what some businesses have said to me is, Woodbridge is great for me as a business because the people who live in Woodbridge are educated, sophisticated, and affluent. And I think we have those residents because of our school system and our proximity to New Haven. But so I think it's sort of like an indirect benefit.
Yep, and that one, and actually that's interesting, Betsy, because I came to the second one after looking at the first. I'm not sure whether there are other benefits for the educational focus in town. I actually the pushback that I wanted to figure out was the one you started with, Jamie, which is there are businesses that cater to education-centered areas, right? I mean, Kumon, you know, what's interesting is the Taekwondo place in Amity. They're not in Woodbridge, you know, by whatever it is, a block and a half, has expanded to another location. They're doing so well here in Woodbridge that they expanded to a additional dojo for the same company in New Haven because business is doing so well. There is a tutoring business right there in that same shopping mall.
Yeah, there's musical folk.
Yeah.
Air Temple Arts down on Research Drive now has a youth program. Rec is a huge business. It's just run by the town.
Little Scientist does their stuff out of JCC, right? Little Scientist
Mhm.
is a
Right.
youth-oriented
We have the
science
Connecticut
program.
Sports Center, we've got the tennis center, we've got two tennis centers actually in town. Pool club, I mean, there's a lot of family-focused activities.
Right.
Not for nothing, but you look at Bethwood baseball, I mean, not that it's a business, but it's
Mhm.
it's one of the prominent baseball leagues in the region.
Mm-hmm.
People do come here for that, and that's what I look at when I think of strengths, what brings people to our community, and that's one of those things that brings people to our community.
And events would. So I think that it's one of those ones that I think we've got to think. It's not something, I agree, that's directly valuable, but as a strength, it does draw people to our community. And I do think that there may be more opportunity for student-focused businesses. There aren't, Bridgeport has an outdoor adventure center, like High Ropes. There are adventure sports things that are things that you could do in Woodbridge, but you couldn't do it in Westville because we've got space. We talk about trails. Mountain biking is mountain biking is a big thing for teenagers and kids, but we don't have anything like that. Adventure racing, like the Maniac Run and all these big outdoor things, are huge businesses. We've never had anything like that in Woodbridge. So again, a lot of these lead their way into ideas, but I think the idea of leveraging our brand as an educational, student-focused town could be leveraged by us.
So Jeremy, when you're talking to potential customers or clients, does that ever come up, or do any of the things on this list ever come up?
Probably there are some of the businesses that have come in. I think that just for some businesses, the proximity, where we are along the Merritt and Route 8 kind of thing, and 34 is definitely a bonus because their employees live in the surrounding towns, so it's a nice hub. I would say that that's mostly and also the proximity to the major universities, which is on the other side as well. But I think just the town offers like a nice, you're really close to Quinnipiac and UNH and Yale and Southern. And I mean, you're so close to all of them. I mean, 15 minutes. So it's, that is definitely for those that are pulling grad students and stuff for their programs. I mean, it's certainly, but the other stuff, I don't know that much that matters so much to people. The people that I've sort of dealt with. I mean, for instance, Harris Webworks. I mean, Matt lives in town. He was coming out of, so for him.
But he moved here because of the school system.
He moved
And
here
then
because
he brought
of
his
stuff,
business
and then he
here.
opened his
Yeah.
business here. Correct.
But I think, and this was why I had both sides, because I started to be like, oh, well, having New Haven nearby is great, but you could say that for Westville, you could say that for Amity, you could say that for Hamden, you could say, so that was where I think the challenge with this is, he started his web company. Well, he could have, it would have been pretty easy to do it in Hamden or Westville. He'd still be so close to home that it wouldn't make a huge difference.
Sure.
And I think that's why I tried to distinguish the two lists, because if you're talking about why have a business in Woodbridge versus Weston or, Westport,
Yeah.
and again, I'm on the management team of a tech company in Norwalk. We are continually talking about leaving Fairfield County because our employees all commute huge amounts of time. And there actually isn't a lot of cultural activity in Fairfield County because New York sucks all the air out of the room, right? Most people who live south of Stamford, if they want to go to see a musical, they're going to go into Broadway, right? Whereas New Haven actually has cultural activities, I mean, next to Hartford of its own. And probably is, I don't know the stats exactly, but I would imagine it's number 2 in the state. I can't imagine what else would be from a cultural activity standpoint. So I think that helps if a business is trying to decide between Fairfield County and Hartford and the New Haven area. But the challenge I thought was much more about, why Woodbridge and not Hamden?
Another thing I've heard from people a lot is safety.
Okay.
Again, in comparison to, in our case, that's why we moved here 29 years ago. We were in Bridgeport at the time, and so safety was a major factor, absolutely. But it's interesting, the approach of by nearby towns, we could have just as well moved to Orange or Hamden or Bethany. So that's, safety is a regional almost thing. So it's just interesting, I hadn't thought about it that way, and really trying to figure out what are our strengths against those other communities. It just happened to be that the real estate was here and available. I mean, we looked all over the place, and we didn't want to go to Torrington because that was too far, and at the time, this was what was available that fit our needs. I think about the businesses that have moved here, to Jeremy's point, when we bring anybody in, it's the proximity to 25, everybody likes, 15, being close to the Parkway. That's, I agree, is definitely seems to be a common theme.
Oh, you think this one?
Yes.
Much more so than the school districts, and
Well, that's for the businesses.
yeah,
in
but
terms
that's
of
what we're trying to
strength.
focus on, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we've got to keep an
that's
eye
why-
on our ball.
That's why the businesses say they move here
Yep.
when we interview the newest ones that come here. But to the point of those that are here, I think that's also interesting. And we keep talking about the home businesses that when they grow, we want to give them the office space. And we've seen that, whether it's Matt or whether it's some of the other folks that are doing just that. They're growing out of their homes, and not that he went, he was down at the Grove or
Yeah.
District or whatever, and when he needed more space, he came back here, which is awesome.
Interesting. So I think one of the things what we may have to figure out in here is that our strength versus nearby towns is if you live in Woodbridge because of the, I would say, domestic benefits, then right, and we'll get into this, one of the ones I put on the opportunity list is one of the big trends that's going on right now is the gig economy, right, which is that we're at an unprecedented time for allowing people to, and I'm going to say work from home, but that doesn't do it justice. I'm not talking about home business like I'm a lawyer and I'm going to put a shingle up on my house and run a business out of my home, but part-time work. And, the poster child for it is being an Uber driver, but obviously you've got people who put up stores on Etsy, you've got people that are taking knowledge jobs that they do at home on their computer. You can work for 4 hours a day for an insurance company from home and telecommute,
And it's also
teledoc,
it's fueling the co-working space trend too.
Exactly.
In Haven, we talked about the other day what you got between the district and the Grove, and make Haven as co-working space, specific for building stuff, but people are running businesses out of there, out of Make Haven.
Yep.
Literally making stuff and shipping it out of there. To your point about these sort of businesses, but my question is, when we look at that first one, if that one is one of the top ones, availability to the Parkway, for example, what differentiates us between here and Hamden? Because you could go to the next exit and do the same thing.
Yeah, the difference is the
91.
weakness. The difference is the weakness is that you can't get trucks into our town because they can't get here.
So I, on
Yeah.
Tuesday, spent about 45 minutes on the phone with somebody who's doing a transportation survey for SCROG, specifically talking about transportation in the region from the business perspective and what the challenges are. And so it's
Yep.
that's
So let's
a
switch
big,
to weaknesses real quick,
big
and
challenge.
then I agree that we need to put in very clearly. I forgot about that one. I put traffic on the merit, but you're right. What our issue is, you can't easily get trucks
You can't
No,
get
there's no
trucks at all
truck
on-
option.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like Jamie knows, obviously, for manufacturing, to get his ductwork out of here, like the truck can't, like an 18-wheeler can't pull up to his.
Well,
They can. They just have to take a long-winded
yeah,
way to
well,
get here.
interestingly enough, maybe that's more perception because I do it every day. Global Merchandisers, he brings in trucks from, he's bringing in cargo containers
Yeah,
every
you go
day.
through Racebrook Road. and-
Yeah, he's breaking them down and he's shipping them back out. Later Crete, they've got 30 to 40 trucks a day in and out of there, which half of them are coming through our town. And so one of the notes I had on transportation is that because of the Waze and using mobile maps, it's bringing more traffic actually now through 114. I see a lot more tractor trailers coming through 114 because they don't want to go down through Westville. And those guys that are coming from out of state, they do not like coming here at all because of the traffic issues.
Because you have people going 114, you're gonna annoy the people in the town, so
Yeah.
that's,
But that's a new observation that I've had. Again, I can't prove that, but I've noticed a lot more tractor trailers driving down 114 these days. Because I think they're just trying to avoid that mess down there.
Right.
Probably.
that
Well, the trucks can come in off
And in the
Route
way,
8 down the
in the
Seaway,
way of
They do that
in the
too,
way of
absolutely.
Waze,
but
and it-
that's still a long
It's a
haul
GPS
to get
test
all
on
the
that
way
way,
back to
you can go that
Amity.
way.
You're right. I mean, now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever seen a semi truck on Amity. In the 4 or 5 years I've lived here, I don't
Yeah, I mean,
think.
they go to Latticre, but they come from the other way.
Right.
Unless they're coming to me, then because
Right.
we trade off. I mean, we know that if they're there, they're coming to me. If they're from
Right.
me, they're going up there.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
But the strengths, I'm concerned that we need to put more
We need
strength
some
into
more. Yeah. So I think that we talked last week a bit about the trail system being a strength, and one of the ones that I wasn't quite sure where to place is, if you look at Hamden and you look at Westville, I mean Woodbridge is woods. I mean, it's a lot more open space, and it is. I mean, the comment I heard in one of the, I think it was actually in the CERC report, was bedroom community.
Do you want me to play devil's advocate? How do you want me to play that?
No,
I could play
by all
devil's
means.
advocate. Go ahead.
it's a weakness, but you can turn it around to be a strength. You're limited in your business district.
Right.
Extremely limited.
Business district.
And
Right, which I
so
think, yeah.
to bring in retail businesses, which would be very nice, you don't have the foot traffic or the infrastructure for that. To look at it for businesses of a service business of some sort where they have vans,
Right.
an HVAC company, something of that nature, that would work great over in Research Park and in certain areas.
And that's our number one problem. I mean, I don't think anybody has missed that right now, the fact that there is no downtown Woodbridge.
Right, there's no downtown. We
I mean,
have,
most people I know when I ask them I'll say, well, the Woodbridge Business District, and they're like, you mean Amity?
yeah,
I mean,
Amity
I
Shopping
know
Center, they
differently
think
'cause
is
I'm on the
Woodbridge,
economic,
but,
but right, most people don't realize that
and then the
that's
other
not Amity.
part is if you do have a successful business that needs to grow, there's no place for them to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's P2 Science. They couldn't stay here. There wasn't room for them.
And the town, unfortunately, is unwilling to
Mm-hmm.
budge on certain things, and so the limitations are just
Well, so
staggering.
I think, and I think that this is one of the things that, and believe me, they're part of this when I was writing it, working on it as well. I was like, this is so grim. One of the things about SWOT analysis is, what is the phrase? The rich laugh and the poor think. Part of the idea of the SWOT analysis is, listen, if our weakness is we don't have a commercial center, great. Now it's judo time. What do we do?
So
And then we go out and brainstorm ideas around that. Like right near me in Norwalk, they had a huge opening of a facility that they created a beer hall called Junction in Merritt 7, which is all apartment buildings.
Mhm.
And what they did was there was one area of it where there was not many people, and they opened Junction. It's a beer hall with kitchen facilities and spaces around back for the food trucks to park. So what they do is it's a marketing enterprise. So they have marketing events, they market people to come to the hall, and the food trucks bid to be one of the 6 food trucks that get to pull up. Right? So it's like a pop-up of, you know what I mean?
No.
Which, again, I don't know that that's the right thing for Woodbridge, but what's interesting is that's not far from what we've done during the summer on the green, right? Where we have the concerts every other week and then they have the food trucks. So I think, you know, that may be one of the things. If we call out the weakness and we just say, well, this is the weakness, how do we work around it? So.
Well, going back to the strengths,
Yeah.
I do have a few. Not that I said we don't have enough. I think one of the strengths that we have is the, following up on what you're saying, you made me think, Mike, was the brewery. I mean, the brewery, I say this time and time again, the brewery is not just a brewery, but it's become a destination and literally put Woodbridge on the map, not only regionally, but throughout, regionally within the Northeast. The brewery is a big draw to this community. And then I think of something like the bike shop. I mean, people come from out of town to come to the bike shop. So some of our retail actually brings more traffic. And is there a way to...
Yeah, but I don't want to cut you off. All those things are certainly true. Those are certainly assets to our town, that we have a nice brewery and some trails, but to the counter side of it, when you bring up New Haven and Hamden, and so New Haven's got Sleeping Giant Park, and they've got the Greenway Canal Trail, and they've got lots of places to go hike, and in New Haven you can go to East Rock, and you can go to Yale Golf Course, and you can go to all these places to hike, and you can go to breweries, numerous breweries in both of those towns and cities.
Numerous being more than one.
Numerous, not more than one, correct. So again, I'm playing devil's advocate, but
No, it's good.
those towns have those things that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a way lower tax base and way many more things to do. So that puts us where it's like, yes, we have a nice brewery. The brewery's awesome, don't get me wrong. I love what we have in our town, but those assets are just the same old things that every other town around us have. They have walking trails, they have shops, they have breweries, they have those things.
So I think, again, strengths and weaknesses, though, and don't get me wrong, Jamie, I understand where you're coming from, but I think one of the things that we need to remember is that this isn't a zero-sum game, right? People won't just go to the brewery in their town and only that. You know, they will venture out and go to other places. So, you know, there is, at the end of this analysis, if our answer is, listen, from a strength and if, let's say hypothetically we get to the end of the process and say, we have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses as other towns, then the answer is we have to out-execute everybody else. We need to have better ideas. Like, the strengths and the weaknesses aren't the end of the process, it's just the beginning.
No, I understand,
So-
but you sort of brought up a comparison to those other towns, and I'm just
Is
saying,
it really a strength?
I'm just saying, compared
Okay.
to those towns,
We're not
So
really
that's
strong at it.
not that we're not strong, but we have what those towns that you mentioned have. Like
No,
those
but
towns have them
no,
too.
but that means it's not a strength.
Okay.
Right?
So
That's what I'm
it.
saying is if we're not better than the average peer in our peer group, then it's not a strength. I'm not being mean. I'm not like, if we say we don't have any more or less, you know, destination businesses than any other town, it's not a weakness, but it's not a strength. And if that's what we're saying, I think you could make a pretty good argument that that is true. And, you know, as you said, I hadn't really thought of it that way. We had a good conversation last week about the trail system and make it being unique for Woodbridge, but you are right. Hamden, the Greenway is amazing, and Sleeping Giant is like that, and Westville has got the park right through the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, in these,
So-
you know, all New Haven's New Haven. Go ahead.
So if you were to look at that and say, okay, Blue Trail is a pretty neat thing that
Mhm.
Woodbridge has. What can we do with it to attract the business
Mhm.
to run a business in there?
Yep.
So if it's some company that says, wow, we want to come in, we see an opportunity here, we'll smooth out the trails, we'll do biking or whatever inside. Is that something that the town would, or whoever the ruling body of the Blue Trails are, would even consider? And could we, is there land available to build an infrastructure to do that?
Yep.
So,
So I
you
think
know, I don't know the answers to that, but that's,
so that's where we go from here. So again, I think that the idea of this is for us to start at some level, the idea of this is to get the things on there so that the next brainstorming meeting about what are potential programs or tactics that we can do to leverage our strengths, mitigate our weakness. You know what I mean? So our job is to figure out how to use our analysis here to now figure out what we're going to do, right? So come up with programs and tactics.
In fairness to other towns again, you know, I think about the trail system we're talking about over in Hamden through Cheshire. You know, that's a real asset to those communities that we don't have. So how do we do that? I mean, we've got lower taxes. We talked about other towns have lower taxes. We don't have that. So, you know, that's what I'm looking at. I'm thinking more about what are the strengths of these other communities out there, and we don't have those. Which is almost making it harder to come up with what our strengths are from the business perspective, because there is value to having, you know, that trail over there for business, because you can easily go for a run or a bike ride, you know, before work or at lunchtime, or you know, you can't do that around here. I've tried to ride my bike from here down there, and it's not easy. It's not safe. You know, there you have the safety of things like that. So those
To
are
go down to like the Greenway.
right. Yeah, those are real assets. For a business to be located near. That friend of mine rides his bike every day from North Haven down to work at Yale, back and forth. I mean, so you can commute on those things.
Right. But I think that so I think that if what we say is, it's not a distinctive strength, we have an asset called the Blue Trail, now we need to come up with ways that we can leverage it. And like you said, that could be the next
Well, that's what I'm thinking about,
portion of
because
this.
from here, we know there's a trail from here down to the business district, but it's not accessible like the trail. So does that get incorporated into this somehow, saying, you know, we know the strength of neighboring communities, the trail system. To Ken's point, is there a way to, you know, improve our trail system to use that as a strength?
Yes, and so the distinction that I want to make here that I think is important is the idea with ranking your strengths is to say, listen, everything is resource limited, right? Let's say the Board of Selectmen say, great EDC, we'll double your budget to be $1,500, right? Right. So, but the point though is that we would be crazy to not take our biggest strength and double down on it. So one of the reasons why we're doing this isn't because we need to leverage every strength. Our goal is to rank them so that we can say, listen, there's one thing that we're really good at. If we come up with tactics, you know, good strategy says take your number one strength and double down on it.
so
Not that there aren't other ideas, but that
another strength, and it's only what I've heard basically here, that we have, is that we have a large amount of home-based businesses. And so if we do, then, you know, that has to do with the school systems and why people are located here. So if you take that one step further and say, okay, it's nice that people want to work out of their house, but they don't maybe not want to work out of their house, or when they get two people in their work environment, they no longer want to work in their house, is an opportunity, if you look further down, to build something like the district, or get somebody to be able to build a district type of.
Well, and I think this is an area where I'm very intrigued, because I've met a lot of the guys at the Grove. In the tech space, the incubator thing is de rigueur, like everyone's doing it. What's interesting, I think, is that the model for incubators is still cut out of the millennial cloth. You know, if I'm going to do a small business from home, I'm not, like, district has beer night, and they have, and don't get me wrong, I'd love to go to beer night. I'd love to be 25 again too. You know what I mean? But so I think one of the things that may be interesting is of what we say is there's a huge opportunity for people who want to get into home-based businesses. How do we help Woodbridge be a great place for home-based businesses for people that are 35 to 50?
And do those people, is that a large percentage of those home-based businesses? Or are they home-based businesses of retirees that still want to do something? I don't know what category
Exactly.
they
Or,
fall into.
You know, and I think similarly, one of the ones that was interesting to me is satellite offices. You know, the gentleman who came in at the business park down in right off Bradley, most of those are satellite offices of doctors who have offices in New Haven at Yale who wanted to have an office closer to home. So there are that's a growth business. There are a lot of doctors in Yale, and it's growing. Yale New Haven Health is expanding rapidly. What if Woodbridge focused on becoming a place for satellite offices for medical? That's
I sort of think they are already, though. Like that whole park has, like, how many different doctors networks in it?
it does.
They're there already. Right?
But what I'm saying is, when we get to opportunities,
Yeah.
that's still a growth business. You know, if you look at mega trends in the United States, healthcare is a huge one. So if we want, you know, the question is, how do we become better at it? I'm not saying we're not doing it now, but we're doing it now because we're lucky.
I mean, our
Right.
three of our largest, biggest businesses in town are, I'm thinking of the assisted living centers.
Assisted living centers.
We have three of them right here in town. Most towns of our size do not have three assisted living centers of this
Right.
magnitude.
Right.
And so, you know, there's a reason they're here. I mean,
And there are services that they may need. I mean, maybe we need to focus on having businesses that cater to providing special services to people that are in assisted living centers. I mean,
part of the feeder to that is a 55 and over housing complex down there in the flats, because that ultimately feeds that assisted living.
right.
You know, I mean, that is economic development in that business district, and there's been proposals for doing that.
Mhm.
And so, you know, that's a potential opportunity, I guess you might say. And I realize we're not onto
Yeah.
opportunities, but
Yeah.
thinking about the healthcare side of things, if there was a 55 and over and they knew where they could go next, because we literally have that transition here from, and they changed names, so I can't remember the names of the three of them, but literally you can go from one to another and as you age. And
Yeah, it's that, and it allows, like we've talked about before, it gives the opportunity for those who want to get out of some of the large housing that we have in Woodbridge and downsize, but be closer to their aging parents. You may be 65 years old and want to be out of your 4,000 square foot house, but your parents are 90 and they're in the nursing home. So, you know, I think there's a lot of that, especially as people are living longer and are, you know, people don't necessarily want to go, but they
And
can't
so
stay.
that piece, that's why it's so ideal, the piece on Bradley, because you've got the medical, as you said, the doctors are right there, you put some more retail on the first level, you put the housing above, so from the economic development perspective, it helps address, you know, taxes, it does not affect the schools, and it, you know, develops that area
Yeah, I mean,
strategically.
It's, you know, being a realtor in town and just sort of, you know, having some vacancies that we've been trying to wrap our head around. Like, I've thought about forever about 245 Amity and why we can't get like a medical, not device, but a medical equipment company there. You've got all these nursing homes around. Why not have like a retail, you know, place that sells walkers and different devices that you need to get when you go in the nursing home? I can't find them to come. I mean, but you would think that the opportunity is right there for something like that. It's across the street from
Right.
three huge nursing homes. You would think that, you know, people come visit their elderly folks and have to buy something that they may need, you know, for their regular care. But it's been tough. And I think some of it's cost. You know, it's just preventative.
prohibitive.
Yeah, I mean, it's cost. It costs a lot of money to be a tenant in Woodbridge as a commercial business. I mean, the rents are high.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that may be part of it. But you know, I think about it all the time. I mean, if economic development we could put our brainpower together to think of what the town needs and then actually identify.
Well, how do we become a center of certain things. Like, you know,
A
that part
summer
of this is
senior excellence. I mean,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with attracting seniors, like you said. That's the future of many opportunities are the silver tsunami, the aging population. I mean, Woodbridge is already primed for that with the 3 large facilities we have in town.
Right.
Do we harness that and take advantage of it?
So there's
Well,
a strength for
it is, and you know the one that
it. You got
you
old people
well, yeah, well, and
on walkers.
well, and I do think that the comment that you made about the makerspace and incubators is worth mentioning, because most of the urban incubator ideas, like District and the Grove and stuff like that, are catering to a different audience. But if you said we're going to do a family-centered incubator, I've not seen anything like that. You know, a community space that was focused on the fact that, listen, you're working on a business idea, you're a parent, and you want to go to stuff in the middle of the day when your kids are at school, or you're going to come over and visit after school. You have evening classes. You know, let me put it this way: there's nothing in that space that I've seen. You know, most of the maker spaces and things like that are all catering to a lifestyle model that isn't Woodbridge anyways. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to attract millennials to come up from the Grove to Woodbridge. They won't. I mean, they can't find anywhere to live here. so I do think
Our
that's
homes are too big for them to live in.
yeah. We could put all of them in one. So, all right, I think that this idea of us talking about us versus the other towns in the area is one of the...
Well, again, an aging population could be used as a
Yep.
strength, again, when you
Yep.
think about the resources we already have here.
Mhm.
Because there really is opportunities for people to, as they get much older, to be in one of those 3 facilities. So wouldn't it be great to have that bridge in between the 55 and over, which we don't have? I mean, whatever, I forget what they call, be politically correct, but,
Okay.
what do they call that? It's not 55 and over, isn't there? Thank you,
Active
active
adults.
adult. I was gonna say kid free.
Empty nest.
Empty nesters. There you go.
All right. So
But, sorry.
I do. One of the ones I do want to ask you guys from your experience with the commercial and the business acquisition side is the businesses that we're talking about. Are we competing for people that are saying, I want to be around New Haven, should I pick Woodbridge? Or are they picking New Haven area, not, I mean, should we be worrying about our strengths versus nearby towns, or is it versus the region? You know what I mean? Like, are we
think
actually...
New Haven is, we're competing against New Haven far more than we ever did in the past, with all the housing going in downtown. I mean, all
Mm.
those apartments going in downtown that weren't there 5 years ago. I mean, last week, Michael was telling me how literally they don't have enough apartment space. They don't have enough residential space, so they're taking over commercial space, and they're running out of commercial space. And the whole reason people want to move there is so they have close access to their offices, but they have to convert the offices into apartments, so there's enough place for people to live. And now they're building more apartments because they don't have enough apartments down there. So
This is in downtown New Haven.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
Ninth
I mean,
Square. I mean,
yeah,
Ninth
people-
Square is booming.
People will pay. Empty nesters are now paying in rent downtown what they could pay for a mortgage in town, but they don't have to pay the taxes.
So that's a good point. You have both millennials and empty nesters in New Haven.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
they have
and
these
we're-
luxury buildings where
Yeah.
2 bedrooms are like $3,000, but they've got everything you need. And there's a pool, and there's a this, and there's a that, and there's a
Walk to
movie theater
restaurants, they
downstairs.
don't
And,
need a car. I mean, there's a
Quality
lot of,
you know,
restaurants.
and it's
those are threats, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you almost hit upon in trying to figure out who we're in competition with, or
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the issue is ourselves, because we don't Woodbridge doesn't really have an identity for any kind of business. And so by not having that identity, nobody really thinks of us as a place to
Right.
move my business, whatever that
Right.
business is.
Right.
Whether it's a business for, walkers and wheelchairs and things like that, or whether it's
Right.
a light manufacturing or a service company, because, Woodbridge is thought of it, I think you said it, as a bedroom community, or
Right.
as because of its school systems, very expensive to live in.
Mhm.
But again, if I don't have kids, I'm not gonna go to Woodbridge.
Mhm.
So it's not, Hamden is at least, is known as, there's businesses, there's
Right.
manufacturing that's done there. And so it's tough for anyone to come in and say, geez, let me look at Woodbridge.
Yeah.
They're bigger, but I think in terms of towns, we compete with New Haven and Orange. Orange a lot, especially residentially. We compete with Orange a lot just because they have a lower mill rate and that big, huge commercial base and a good school system because they end up coming over to Woodbridge to go to high school anyways.
But also, we don't have a lot of space.
We don't have a lot of space that's built for people to come to.
Right.
Correct. There's space.
Right.
Just
But I
nothing
but I
built on
think
it.
this point is an interesting one, which is, whatever it is, you could be good at if you don't focus on anything, then you're good at nothing. Because we don't have an identity, and we are smaller, so we can't be a jack of all trades. We can't compete that way. So I think one of the things that's interesting about the strengths list is, listen, some of identity is perceived, right? We need to decide what we want to be known as and market that.
I think
And I
we're known
agree.
as Exit 59, Starbucks, Katz's, and a gas station. To be,
But-
Well,
And I think
and that's what we are known as. The question is, what do we want to be known as?
And I think that's a good question. I think the question is not just with these 5 people in this room. I think the question is to be discussed with the town. I mean, to be discussed with the selectmen and folks that are leading us into the direction to make a decision on what our identity is. But without that conversation between EDC and the selectmen's office, I don't know how it's ever going to come together because we don't have any direction on where we can put our
Well, but
efforts. Because you
wanna
don't want
make
to.
we need to make a distinction between, our goal as a commission is to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen about our perception to business, right? I mean, I agree with you, we can't let this expand to the scope of, how do people in Hamden see Woodbridge?
Just to interject,
Right.
we have done that. I mean, we've done the POCD, and we have the input from the community, and we have the second, that's what I keep referring to, is
Right.
the plan of conservation
I'm
development.
waiting for that conversation.
Yeah.
I've been here for 4 years. I haven't seen a conversation between EDC and leadership of the town to figure out what do we want to do, where are we going, what should we push that you are behind, because otherwise, if we push and there's no one backing us up, you're just spinning your wheels. It's a lot of speed.
But I think that this meeting is the beginning of the process for we're trying to explain that we've analyzed the situation. We want to recommend to the board of,
Right.
I mean, right, that's where, and this was Jody's point, right? Which is
Yeah.
let's not go tilt a windmill. I think what we want to try to do is say, we've analyzed our strengths, we've analyzed our weaknesses. We want to start that conversation with their recommendation, which is we've looked at 8 or 10 things. We think these 2 are the strongest things. And if what we say is one of the biggest things is we need to we need to suggest, here are 2 things that we're strong at. We think there are opportunities that they're growing, and we think we could change the business identity of Woodbridge to be X and Y. And we need to go to the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, we think that having a concerted effort for education and family-focused businesses and active adult businesses, we're good at it, we're positioned well, everyone else isn't as well positioned as us. So if we're going to fight on any ground, let's fight here. Now, the Board of Selectmen may say, thanks for your input, no. But that's,
But we do
that's
have
why
our
they got
lia-
elected and we
And we have our liaison with Mika, Mika's been on the EDC, so, he would definitely support what we're doing. He unfortunately couldn't be here, but, wanted to be able to phone in at least. So, that is the plan, is to go through this, bring it to them, and, because we do need to drive this a little bit. We absolutely have to come with the ideas, bring it to them, get their support. And I circle back to even the wayfinding thing, which we keep talking about, and some of the comments here, in many cases, people just drive through the town. It's not just people that live here, but we have a lot of people that drive from Bethany to New Haven, or north of Bethany to New Haven. They're literally driving through town, and do they even realize they're driving through Woodbridge? Or are they driving through part of Amity? And without the signage there, nobody realizes that that's there, because you think of Amity and you think of, well, Amity Meat Market, Amity Wines, well, one's in New Haven and one's in Woodbridge. And so I think for a lot of people, they don't even know where the line is. A lot of people think Stop and Shop is in Woodbridge, and they don't realize that's all in New Haven. And so part of having that distinction in marketing and making sure people know where Woodbridge is, I think is important as well. Part of the discussion.
The Athenian just took the Amity name. I said the Athenian just took the Amity name.
Well, that's the thing.
It's
Yeah,
like
I
pushing
mean,
Amity
whether it's the
to-
Westville name or the Amity name, it's very blurry between Woodbridge and Westville, or New Haven and Woodbridge.
Yeah.
And so I think we really need to clarify the differences between Woodbridge and New Haven.
Just trademark it.
I think it
Go after people.
would help. When they're driving, oh wow, I didn't realize it in Woodbridge. I thought I was in New Haven, or I thought this was Amity or Westville.
So I think we've drifted into it. So let's talk about weaknesses. So I know that the ones
just one more strength
go
which we
ahead.
didn't have was
Yeah.
JCC.
You're right. That was one of what Jody had said. Absolutely.
There's a whole lot.
Yeah, that's
Right.
that's three letters that don't do it justice, but of course. So I think all of us have said, one of our biggest weaknesses is there is no downtown, right? We mentioned no truck options, and obviously for people that's not a big deal, but for businesses of many ilk, that's a problem. We are, in a world that is increasingly talking about mass transit, we're actually not great at it. There's no mass transit options for Woodbridge at all, to the best of my knowledge. Seymour is on a spur, so that's not useful. Getting onto Amtrak or Metro North is 30 minutes. So you're I know because my company's on it. You're trapped, right? It's faster to drive to Bridgeport than it is to try to get on a train around here. Traffic on the Merritt is obviously a problem. We said no distinctive identity, and that may be actually higher than traffic, but I'm trying to weigh this for businesses.
I think the number one isn't even on there, that we have limited zoning opportunities for businesses.
Well, that would. Right.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you so
thought that was the
violently
traffic.
that I made
Sorry,
that
I
first.
saw traffic.
You
and I
saw foot
commercial.
traffic.
I was-
Yeah, sorry.
No.
Yeah, those are two.
Okay.
Separate issues.
Yep. Because this thing is period, and then the other thing is no downtown, right?
Yeah.
No gathering place, so
Yeah.
that JCC, or I guess the beer place is a gathering place, and other than that, there's,
Yep.
other than a restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, one of the other ones that the CERC report said politely was, we're really small, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Other things that put us on the map, we were talking about how in the brewery, yes or no, but even Katz's, I was talking to somebody who lives in Fairfield, and we were gonna meet halfway to, next week, we're having lunch, and he's like, why don't we meet at Katz's? Katz's is again another draw, so we do have some distinguishable, establishments in the area that do help put us on the map, so I don't know if there's a way to,
Maybe you just call it landmarks, the JCC, Katz's, the brewery, all these kind of big
but
draws.
to that point, how many people know if Starbucks is in Woodbridge or not?
Right.
They probably think that's in New Haven. If Stop and Shop's in New Haven, well, Starbucks is probably in New Haven because Woodbridge doesn't have anything. And maybe Katz's is in Amity.
Yeah.
They don't know it's in Woodbridge.
Exit 59.
Yeah.
So 59,
Right.
exit 59
Yeah.
car stop.
It's not, Katz's
Yeah.
in Woodbridge or Starbucks in Woodbridge. It's the Starbucks off exit 59.
right, right. No, you're absolutely right.
So that goes to no identity.
Yep.
Because they're
It
not,
does.
they're not
Yeah.
relating one to the other.
Right.
I think another weakness, if you will, is there's no incentive packages from the town that I know of for
There
any
aren't.
business to come here, or,
But there is a precedent which we have to go back and look at for when the Bayer building was built, right? Didn't we say there was
Yes,
something?
I've started a file on incentives, and I've got examples from Derby, Seymour, Beacon Falls, Hamden, a handful of other towns that we could be
It was a
looking
great
at.
point, because my point is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's low hanging fruit right there.
Is that something that comes up when you guys are talking to prospective
I
tenants?
think it's part of the discussion. I mean, if I'm gonna move here, and I gotta redo a whole building to
Mm-hmm.
move to Woodbridge or go someplace else where I don't have to do as much, you know, what's the town gonna do for me? And literally
Because to your
as,
point.
we don't
you
know
rattled
anything that the
off all
town's
those
gonna
towns
do.
that have it, and we don't.
Yeah, and there are neighbors.
Yeah.
No.
So that's.
I didn't hear what you said, I'm sorry.
No, Betsy was just saying, well, she went to all these neighboring towns that have them. So that means that they all have them and we don't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
got
It's
to have
publicized.
some effect.
So, you know, you're already behind the 8 ball
Right.
unless you got exactly what the person wants.
And then we don't welcome in, and, you know, we don't have, as, business-friendly, government here. I mean, to be politically correct, and I think government can be more business-friendly when it comes to welcoming businesses, supporting new businesses to come into the community. I mean, and that's just been forever. I mean, it's, when we moved here 29 years ago, we were not welcomed, and I hear the same stories today. And that's unfortunate that perception hasn't changed. And so,
Yeah, the triple net costs for the retail commercial owners, you know, that they put on their tenants in this town are like Fairfield County triple nets. I mean, you're talking about, you know, you have a $16 per square foot or $20 per square foot for retail space, and the nets are going to be $6 because of the high taxes, and it's prohibitive for towns for tenants to come in, and even if the town could figure out ways to incentivize some of the, it's impossible because you'd be losing taxes.
So yeah, I mean, it sounds like this is actually a much bigger issue, which is that
Yep.
that we have a budget issue in the town, which is right. The mill rates are high, and the rates for businesses are high. So not only are we not subsidizing business, we're penalizing it. We're doing the opposite
Yeah.
of
I
subsidizing
mean,
it.
unfortunately, you could put number one, we're not business friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality of it, and all of those bullets below it support that. And you think about, I mean, I've worked with a lot of other communities around here in their economic development teams, and what they're doing to reach out to the business community and how they're partnering with the business community. I mean, I can name a half a dozen of them that are neighboring communities that are doing so much more. So that's a real,
So Jamie, as a
competitive.
business owner, with all these issues, why do you stay?
because I'm a manufacturer and it's not easy, it's not, it's much easier to move another business than a manufacturing company because I have a lot of machinery, and it's not cheap to move, but it's certainly not out of the question. I mean, you know, we're here, we own the building. If we didn't own the building, you know, that would be a big difference. But it's much easier to move an accounting firm from one town to another than move a manufacturing firm from one town to another.
It really seems to me, after being in town for however many years we've been here now, I would say, and I don't know, this is just numbers I'm throwing out there, but I think at least 50% of the business owners in this town live in this town. At least. So many of the big companies. Now, I'm not talking about Amity Shopping Center, and I'm not talking about the banks along the strip, but if you look at Kenworth, and you look at Jamie's business, and you look at, you know, 245 as a local owner, and they're local owners of all these businesses. They all live here. You know, Red Approach is locally owned, and Red Barn is locally owned, and Katz's is locally owned, and, you know, Advanced Paving is locally owned. They're all people that live in our town. These are all the big businesses in our town. So I think that there's something to be said for that. I just don't know what it is. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's not a lot of people that live outside of this town that own businesses in this town, in my personal, you know, opinion on what I see. Even all the doctors live in town.
So it's convenience.
You know,
Somehow,
the physical therapy people live in town, right? I mean, all these people live in this town that own businesses in this town.
And the other challenge, though, going back to Ken, while we're here, we own the building, but it hasn't appreciated in value in 29 years. I mean, it's worth exactly the same as it was 29 years ago. I mean, that's not a good thing. You know, not that you buy something for that, but usually, you know, usually, but not in this town. And so that's a real challenge in terms of investing in the community.
I put that in threats actually, because there was a decent portion of the CERC report talks about real estate value, mainly because of this last point, which is one of our biggest weaknesses is still, all these things are dependencies, right? Our grand list is whatever, you know, a huge portion of our grand list is residential. Because of that, we don't invest in commercial,
but it's
because we don't invest in it, we don't get more of it.
But it's single family
Yeah.
home residential. We
Right.
have no entry level, we have no active adult living, it's all single family
Single
homes. So it's not, you can't even say residential, it's not even diverse residential,
Right.
it's one type of residential.
Right. Right.
But to Jeremy's point, I don't know what to make of that. I mean,
I
the
don't
pros and
either.
cons of,
If you think about it, I mean, Betsy, you've been to some of the, are they, most of these people, they live here? That
The
are,
businesses?
yeah. In your
A
experience?
lot of them, I mean, I've only, been to less than 20 so far, so
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had contact with way more local businesses
well, even my
than
neighbor,
I have.
Pete,
but-
Pasta Forming Corp., you know, he lives in town.
Amity,
works down
Amity
there.
Me,
Yeah, I
Blue
mean, that's
Check,
great
I mean,
to have
everybody
those
lives in this-
conveniences, to Ken's point, but,
But I also think it says something about the faith people have in Woodbridge. You know, if you were down on Woodbridge, why would you invest in Woodbridge in addition to owning a house? Why would you invest in another building and the equipment and don't you? Doesn't that give you some sort of
No, but if
Feelies?
you're affluent, you don't want to drive all the way down to New Haven.
Yeah, those 10
it's
minutes.
just math. I mean, why do people buy a Mercedes when you could buy a Kia and they both get you there? You know.
Well, yeah, but I think it's like it's that to your point. It's quality, right? People are here because they want to be here. You buy a Mercedes not just because you can, but because you want it.
Yeah.
Like you're there. So I think that's a positive.
Well, it's quality of living. I'm sorry, what I was trying to say is it's quality of living. You put your business in Woodbridge and your commute's 5
but
minutes.
you
It's
also,
like we're
but,
locally owned and locally run kind of town. I don't know what
but you wanna see things,
It's
We're a
a new
bed and
slogan.
breakfast. We're
Right.
a giant bed and breakfast.
but in 29 years, you wanna see things get better.
Yes,
And that's what we
absolutely.
haven't seen. And you go to Hamden and the rail trail that wasn't there before, or how they've improved their zoning, and, so that's a neighboring community that's done things. And sure, I'd be much happier if I was in Hamden from a business perspective, because I know the real estate values would have increased from that alone. And if I was near the rail trail, I'd be able to use that at lunchtime, or, ride in the morning or after work, and, you don't have those sort of things
So
here.
what worries me then, thinking about this, is you think about like the Urbanos who built 245 in hopes and with their faith in that Woodbridge would start to rally around that and build around that, which it's done none of.
Right.
And I worry that folks like that are they're just gonna start, like those properties are for sale down at Research Drive. It's gonna start going the other way, and then I don't know what we gotta keep what we have and try to grow from there, and
Yeah.
really focus on what we have and not let those folks leave. Like not let them fail, not let them get discouraged, not let them.
That's
Yeah.
actually that's a really interesting point, because a lot of businesses and business strategy will say, whereas the cost of losing a customer is twice what it takes to get one. So you're right. Maybe part of our recommendation needs to be, listen, our first priority needs to be grab the kids that we've got and hold them really close. Make sure they understand what we're doing, and make sure that we're spending as much on retention as we are on events and programs and acquiring new stuff. Like, our biggest thing is we can't lose businesses,
Right. We can't.
and we need to prioritize, like, retain, grow, then acquire. Because honestly, we can't do a great job at acquisition because we don't have the spaces to put them in. Right? I mean, so maybe that's part of what comes out of our strengths and weaknesses. Is one of the things we got to say is we're gonna propose a strategy, which is that we go this direction. Because I agree with Jamie. We can't afford to lose any of them.
No, I mean, it would be nice to have like I'd like to do in Haven like that live shop local week or whatever it is. Like it'd be good to sort of bring attention to everything local. I know we try to do it through Fallapalooza and all that
Spread
stuff.
out. I mean, that's the problem. You go to Urbano's building, and if that was completely full and very successful, she'd want to build another one, or somebody would want to build another one next
And we
door.
tried that, you know, when we started with the,
Oktoberfest.
yeah, what do we call that
The
thing?
Fallapalooza.
Fall
Fall
Palooza,
Palooza,
right.
the first one, you know, was timing 2:45 all the way to Wheelers. And logistically, it's not possible.
Right,
You know, we
right.
tried to do something, People's Bank was giving us their parking lot, but then you couldn't walk across the street, and so it just, logistically,
But-
it's
So it was
challenging.
logistically difficult, but also the buy-in from, there were, you know, a few businesses that were like, yes, let's do this, and everyone else was like, what's
But
the point?
what if we sell it to the businesses that we're doing this for you? This is
That's
a
what
local
we did.
week.
It wasn't like, what can you do for us? It was like, we're doing this to bring attention to your business, bring in foot traffic for
Right,
you.
and the problem with
And they all
that,
said,
the
no
problem
thanks.
was that you
Is it
have
around
a
the
few
theme?
businesses, retail businesses that do really, really well, and then everybody else just is, you know, trying their best to stay above water.
Yeah.
And so you say, okay, the buy-in's $500, let's say for the event, for the successful
We
retailers,
weren't
they're
even
saying,
asking them to spend money.
whatever it is, but
But I think it's also that there's some of these things with event things that are sugar shocks, right? Like, so you have one big weekend.
and then
I
what?
think the question that I wonder about is, you know, one of the things that I heard on one of these economic development podcasts was them talking about, I don't remember what the name of their town was, but I jotted it down as Woodbridge Works, which is, it's like an ongoing marketing program for Woodbridge people to patronize Woodbridge businesses. Right? One of the things I thought was interesting was they talked a little bit about the fact that there are certain businesses that you don't want to drive to. Right? Coffee in the morning. You know, you want to be able to get it along the way. You don't like Wooden Tap in Orange. I like that place, but I'll go to the Social because it's 10 minutes closer. Right? And there are a class of businesses that you don't want to drive to. Right? And we don't actually have all those kinds of businesses in Woodbridge. Like you go to Westville to go to the breakfast place,
Lina's.
Nina's. And now there's another one across the street from it, Bella's,
But
right?
we do have, I mean, again, to play devil's advocate,
Yeah.
I guess, you know, when I didn't live in town and lived in Stratford and worked here for many years, I used to say I did everything in Woodbridge and didn't do anything back in Stratford where I lived because I could get everything I needed in the business district. I'd go, you know, go to Amity Motors, go to the bike shop, go to
Yeah.
Amity Meat, go to Katz's, you know,
Yeah.
everything. I go to People's Bank. I mean, literally everything I need is right there. And that was part of the concept of getting people to understand that everything you need, for the most part, and Stop and Shop is over the line, but,
Yeah.
you know, other than that, I mean, Brookside on my way home, I'll go to Amity Meat in Brookside and get almost everything I need that I would otherwise get at Stop and Shop that I don't need to go to Stop and Shop for. So we
But
do
what I'm
have
saying
it.
is we need to market that.
Right, that's my point.
And I think maybe that's one of the challenges that the EDC has to realize is that some of what we need to be doing is just marketing a Woodbridge, like
Well, that was
encouraging
part of the
Woodbridge
shop
people to
that-
buy at Woodbridge
That was
businesses.
part of the Shop Woodbridge,
Yep.
try or dine, you know, whatever.
Oh,
you
okay.
know, because it was Shop in Woodbridge, Dine in Woodbridge, and Try Woodbridge, and let people know that. And so we had it, you know, it was, came out of EDC, but we really didn't do a whole lot about it. We didn't have a town-wide, you know, promotional campaign around
Right.
that. But that was the thought behind it, because literally everything you need, including your medical facilities, is all right here. And, you know, your fitness, you know, they're really, if you go down the list of everything you need, we do have it.
Yeah.
I don't-
Especially if you count Amity, the Woodbridge Amity gray area, right? Yeah. Well, listen,
So-
I think we should keep the Woodbridge business promotion idea on our list for next week. So, right, I want us to keep going in the last two sections, but I think that that's got to be one of the things we have to analyze is the tactic of a business promotion program. And again, whether we do it or we organize it is separate questions, but it seems like that should be on our list somewhere.
So we're at 8:30, so what do you want
Yep.
to do? You want to,
I think opportunities and threats end up being a tiny bit easier
You wanna talk about it? You guys wanna stay for a few minutes, to talk about it, or?
Okay. Do another 15 minutes or so and see how it goes? All right. So I think when you look at opportunities and threats, now we scale way back out, which are what are the trends that are going on in the market, and how could we leverage them or be affected by them? And I jotted down a couple. One of them that I mentioned because I'm kind of aware of it through my wife's business down in New Haven, but one of the reasons why medical satellite offices are becoming way more common is because of electronic medical records, right? New Haven has instituted electronic medical records for all their extended practitioners, which means it's not a big deal to have a satellite medical office. That used to be a huge deal because you have to move charts around. But now setting up a new medical office is not complicated at all. So, that's a trend that I wanted to call out because of us talking about this aging population. There's wind at the back of that growing, just because of changes in technology. Similarly, autonomous cars, it's next year. It's going to become very, very real in 2020. I mean, all the stats with Waymo and Uber and Google and Tesla and all these guys that are doing it, I'm on the Merritt twice a day for an hour. There are people in self-driving cars on the Merritt Parkway. And all these cars are all shipping in 2019, 2020, 2021.
So just to sort of move it along a little bit, what differentiates these from any other town now, to come back to where we were on the other slides?
Correct.
Yeah,
And the
these-
question ends up being, honestly, I think that the biggest job generation area in the country right now is New York City. People, extending their commuting distances out from Fairfield County or down from other areas. Woodbridge has been uncommutable. In the past, Woodbridge was uncommutable from Fairfield County or from Hartford or
But
from...
the other side of that is, for those who don't want to commute, to Jeremy's point, is
Yep.
that people live in town and work in town.
Yep.
And so that is it seems to be a unique opportunity to Woodbridge that you
Yep.
say you don't observe in other communities as
Right.
much. So to me,
Yep.
I don't know where that is, if that's a strength or an opportunity to
Yep.
market that
Right.
we have, it's a nice community to live in, and you could work here too, and you don't have to commute, you don't have to worry about an
Absolutely.
autonomous car, because you can
Mhm.
hopefully someday bike to work more safely than you can now. To me, I'd love to be able to ride my bike safely every day down, it's 3.5 miles, but
Mhm.
it's not easy to ride up and down Center Road in Amity.
Yep. Well, and again, one of the things that I bring up for opportunities is only because these are culturally changing trends, right?
But are there specifics to our town that we could differentiate?
And maybe not. That's a good point. Maybe not.
I'm just wondering if anybody else has thoughts that we can.
Well, I think the opportunity in our town is something that's going to cater to our aging population, if that's what we have in our town. So, I mean, I think
good
that
point.
maybe, the 55 and over sort of idea. I mean, that idea is an opportunity, because if someone could come in here and tailor to those folks that are looking for a downsized,
Part
you
of
know,
that is the marketing, and
Yep.
from our perspective, what can we do to support that if it does come up as a discussion again? We're doing the research here, realizing that there are real opportunities for the town, and I think what would be interesting is to look at the financial impact of that, because everybody's talking about the traffic impact of that. Well, and to Mike's point, traffic is not as bad as it used to be, because things are a little bit different, and I noticed it down in the flats, the traffic isn't as bad.
It's not as bad.
I don't know if it's because of Waze, we're improving the roadway down there, so those might not be as much of a barrier to somebody potentially re-exploring that as a development opportunity down there, and then we look at the economic impact, it could be a win-win.
But this is an opportunity, I don't know how to state it correctly. As the aging population moves out of their homes and into these other assisted living facilities, that opens up another generation of coming into these homes. And what is driving the person to buy a house in Woodbridge now? Is it, we go back to the school system.
It's
if-
cool.
And that's, and knowing that those are the people that are running businesses in our community, what kind of businesses are
Well,
they
yeah, that's
looking
back to
for?
what Mike's saying.
Right, we go back to this
Family.
virtuous circle. If what we say is we're going to try to double down on small
Something.
businesses for families,
Family-friendly businesses.
then what the idea is that we, you know,
And we have a model for that. We have the
Yep.
Connecticut Sports Center. We have the 2 tennis centers. I mean, we have, with, like I said, the Woodbridge Pool Club. I mean, we have, or the Woodbridge Club, and we have a lot of family-friendly stuff, but again, we don't market that.
We don't market it
We're not
that way.
doubling down. We're not even thinking about it.
right, right, right.
There's a lot of opportunity there, absolutely.
Right. I think one of the other opportunities is honestly, it's at a weird level, is CERC kind of stuff itself, which is that, you know, the regionalization of New England is at some level going to become a foregone conclusion, right? Which is that, you know, I was telling you guys, I was listening to this economic development thing from Texas, and, you know, they've got economic development group of Fort Worth, and it's like 8.2 million people. For us to do economic development and try to attract a business with 8,000 people is almost laughable, right? So the reality is that, like, what's happening, and we're actually at the front of it some with the school district, right? The question is, should we be doing more with the Valley Chamber of Commerce, with other economic development commissions? Should we be trying to join with other towns to compete? And I know CERC does that some, and there are other groups in the state that do that, but, you know, maybe that could help us as an overall opportunity.
One thing I've been thinking about is kind of riding the coattails of New Haven. Mike Harris that you
Yes.
met from? So he's really focusing on these bioscience companies in New Haven, and what he said to me was that there's so many bioscience companies and there's just not enough lab space for them. And if we could convert some of our empty office space, and I don't know what the cost involved is, if it would be worth it, but if we could convert some of this space to lab space, we've got all these businesses just dying for a
auction
space.
is all lab space. The place that used to be the JCC,
Yeah.
or where the JCC was, that's all lab space.
Well, I think what's empty there though has been converted back to office
Yeah, but it's
space.
still got all the.
It's got the guts.
It's
Okay.
got all the bones to make it back to what it was. All that, the clean air exchangers and all that stuff are all still there. All the lines for all the hoods are all still up in the
I'll
ceiling.
call Mike and tell him.
The incentives
Again, we get
were there.
back
Well,
to-
yeah, I talked to him yesterday about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his boss about
Well,
it a little bit.
And I think that's one of the things that was interesting is there's incentives and there's the town willing to do the if there was a way to help get investment,
Sure.
right? Which is, I think, different from an incentive. Like, one of the things that's interesting is Woodbridge is full of affluent people. Like, there are investment opportunities for some of this stuff, and I don't know how those all work, but there's grant money and there's stuff like that where I don't know whether it's possible for us to figure out a way to help line up investment stuff for businesses to come to Woodbridge. Not direct incentives, but help them get the investments they need to.
Yeah, we could probably figure out how to do that matchmaking.
Right.
Like in the same line of thinking, our biggest weakness is an opportunity if we can work with the town to help change some of these zoning laws. Because that is our biggest weakness, but it's an opportunity because we've gotten by all this time with
Right.
terrible zoning laws, and if we were able to change them and then attract businesses that can fit into those zones,
Right.
then we're taking our biggest weakness and making it an opportunity, and then we can jump on our
And I
biggest
think with the
weakness.
right identity, it could be different. If the zoning concerns is people are always afraid that you're going to put in a nightclub next door. And if
You
we
can
say
limit that.
instead, you know, I was at the zoning meeting, it was wild. I mean, if one of the ideas is stuff like we're going to focus on bioscience lab space. Why? Because New Haven's throwing millions of dollars at it. Most people in Woodbridge would be like, oh, you're gonna put a medical lab next door, like a Quest place that's gonna be open normal hours and it's just lab people?
The
That's
land-
fine.
The land that's developable has zoning on it that needs to be changed for those things to be done
Right.
because the only place to build is certain areas.
But I think that if we could narrow our focus, it'll help some of that out.
Part of,
Well, then-
I agree, marketing is a huge opportunity because again, people don't even know where Woodbridge is. I mean, so many
Right.
people are, where's
So-
Woodbridge? And
So Jamie, if somebody comes to us, and let's say a biotech company wants to come and convert that space and says, I need help finding money or I need help finding a way of doing that, and came to the town of Woodbridge, is there someone in the town of Woodbridge that they would
There's
come
now.
to you? And then what would happen?
So if they needed financing, I would refer them to the small business, can't remember what the A is for, to CIC, what's CIC stand for? Commercial,
Investment community.
thank you. So there's a couple different spots that I could refer them to. I mean, I don't have the money, the town doesn't have the money, but really we're kind of in that matchmaking role.
Do you help them walk through it, or is it just here's the? To what extent? I guess to what I'm asking.
Well,
is
it hasn't
to what
happened
extent?
yet, but I would make those connections.
Well, for instance, if someone came in and said, I want to buy 4 Research Drive and I have to put $1 million into it, what can the town do for me? Is there a body that could say, we will let you own that property tax-free for X amount of years because we know you're putting X amount of dollars into the town?
No, so, I mean, we could, but there's no, aside from the one time that we did it back in 1990, maybe, there's.
For that same building.
Yes, there's nothing else that I know about, but that's why I've been starting a folder on incentives. I'd love to, if this is the direction you
Yeah.
guys wanna go,
And
I'd
Research
love
Drive
to
was
have,
built to be all research facilities to support Yale.
Yeah.
And you look at the POCD today, and the POCD supports everything we're talking about.
Right.
Partnership with Yale and other universities.
Right.
As you said, it's not just Yale. I mean, you got Quinnipiac, you got
Right.
University of Haven. I mean, you know, it's,
Yep.
we've been spinning our wheels for 29 years, literally.
Southern's 2 steps away. I mean, Southern's
Yeah.
so close to us, and they've got this like thriving graduate program now that wants to get their graduates out into the business world. And
They all get
It's
off
like 2
exit
steps
59
away.
to go there.
yep.
I mean, they're getting
Yeah.
off and, you know, right here. They take
All
a
you take
left.
is Valley Road. Valley Street just takes you right into Woodbridge. I mean, it's like a shot from
So
Southern right to
I
Woodbridge.
think opportunity number one, to your point, I mean,
Yeah.
to really do something concrete, is a tax incentive package,
Yeah.
and that's really what needs to be pitched to the selectmen, is to say, these are the things we're talking about, in order to do what Jeremy just said. Somebody comes in, they wanna spend $1 million to, you know, revamp that piece of property, what is the town gonna do? The answer right now is nothing.
Well, and I think that the question could be,
That's the
like you
huge
said, is
opportunity.
we've got to get that opportunity, and it might be honestly that we're brokering it. Because I mean, if we had greased the skids with resources in Connecticut Innovation, I mean, there are state loan programs for businesses to get people to come to Connecticut. So it doesn't have to be Woodbridge's money. I mean, we could help. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
it's
that's
like your
where this-
welcome package.
But that's where the selectmen
Yeah.
need to be educated
Right.
about the opportunities that are out
Right.
there.
And like you said, it's just like our welcome package for businesses. If we have a welcome package that says, it's not that we know that there's some state opportunity, we've talked to them, we've got a template for a contract, we'll help get the money from the state, even if that's who it is. You know, I think that's what, you know, I agree with you. I think we just gotta have all the pieces together and have the state, have the Board of Selectmen ready, that in case of fire, break glass kind of thing, that we're ready if the door knocks, that we've like, here's our package, even if it's not all us.
Absolutely. And it involve, you know, the utilities as well, because they all have the economic development arms. The Chamber of Commerce is hiring through the support of the through the Regional Water Authority. They announced that last week at the Chamber Annual, that they're funding an Office of Economic Development out of the Chamber. So to your point about regional support, I mean, we've had Ginny here before from Rex. I mean, so there's regional support that would certainly help our community here. So, yeah, to me, that would be the number one opportunity, the number one thing that we could bring to the selectmen. And again, we have the documentation to support it in POCD as well, so it's nothing new, it's just trying to firm it up. We're pushing 9, so.
Alright, so we should probably stop with this. So what I can do is I'll take the comments that we've got, I'll try to consolidate it all up, work with Betsy to make sure that it's all wrapped in a package based on what we saw here. And then we can have the follow-up meeting and talk a tiny bit about threats, and then try to come up with, I think, a list of candidate programs, right? I think that the way that I've seen these analysis work well is we walk back through the SWOT,
come up with a list of candidate programs and then try to rank them based on, honestly, how easy is it and how valuable is it? Because for us, listen, we're in a world where we're not going to be swinging for the grand slams. We're going to need a proposal that's some base hits and maybe a grand slam swing. But I think our challenge is we need to get some base hits that we can do. And maybe those are the retention things that we were talking about. So,
Awesome.
cool.
Well, thank you very much. Our next meeting is June 6th. Jody will be back to do that one. I will not be here for that one, so we'll be tag teaming. But thank you, Mike, very
Oh,
much.
thank
This
you,
is
guys. This
awesome.
is great.
Long overdue. And this is going to help get us back on track. Do we even need a motion to adjourn if we don't have a quorum? We do? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So
Awesome. Second?
Second.
All right.
Any second.
Meeting adjourned 9:48? 8:48, sorry. Whew, it's not 9:48.